Welcome back, welcome back. Voters in the 27 member states of the European Union are voting this weekend for their representatives, MEPs, to the European Parliament. But many observers are more interested in the numbers who turn out than in the actual results. At the last Euro elections, turnout fell below 50% for the first time, and many fear that it might be even lower this time around. So if they're right, why are so few European voters keen to exercise their democratic right? I'm joined now from Stockholm by the former Prime Minister and now Foreign Minister of Sweden, Carl Bildt. Carl, as you know, we want to talk in a moment or two about the whole subject of the European elections. But first of all, a couple of stories out of today's headlines. Here we have in the Times the headline, Swedish banks fear huge write-downs if Latvia sparks off Baltic devaluations. Now, how serious is that for Swedish banks, that crisis, that part of the economic crisis, or are Swedish banks strong enough to withstand it?
I think they're strong enough to withstand it. There might be some write-offs, obviously, but that's happening all the time, and we are in a fairly complicated global financial situation. But we do have an interest that should be stressed in the stability of Latvia, in the stability of the Baltic states. They're in a fairly difficult financial situation, but we are doing whatever we can from Swedish side, from the European Commission side, from the IMF side to help them, and I'm quite certain that will succeed.
And then there's the decline, of course, of General Motors. What effect will that have on those great cars made in Sweden, Saab?
Well, the obvious effect is that Saab, which has been owned by General Motors, will be owned by someone else in a couple of weeks, a couple of months' time. I don't know by whom, but I'm quite certain that they will be able to use the superior technology base that Saab has for doing something that's going to be important for the future of the automotive industry. And the same story, to some extent at least, with Volvo, that's now owned by Ford Corporation, and they want to divest that and sell it to someone. So it's going to be a car industry with no doubt in Sweden in the future, but it's going to be a different one with a different ownership.
Will there be fewer Swedish jobs, do you think, inevitably, because people will be trying to economize?
Yeah, I could well be. I mean, productivity is on the increase all over the world when it comes to manufacturing of cars and transport vehicles. So that might well be the case. We are going for new technologies when it comes to sort of different green technologies. So it will be heavier, I would say, on the research and development and new technology side, and perhaps more of automatic manufacturing that we've seen. This is a trend that we've seen for quite some time.
Well, coming to the European elections this weekend, how important are these elections? Of course, Sweden takes over the EU presidency next, but how important are these elections? Do they matter to the future of Europe?
I think they matter. I mean, they matter in two respects. First, they matter in the immediate respects that the composition of the European Parliament does impact the way in which policies are decided, policies are conducted in the European Union over the next 5 years. I mean, the European Parliament is somewhat more important when it comes to decisions that I think most people are aware of. And accordingly, both the political balance in the Parliament as well as the quality of the individual MEPs is of importance when it comes to the policies that are decided. Secondly, I think the election campaign itself is important, because I do think that if you look at the national elections across Europe, we tend to discuss national issues. Now we have an opportunity to discuss the important European issues with our respective electorates, and that is important in itself.
And in terms of the election itself, is the turnout not being low as important as who actually wins?
Well, both are important. The turnout is obviously going to be lower than it is in a national election, because there's not the drama. In a national election, you have sort of who's going to be prime minister, who's going to be in government in all of the countries, and that's an element of drama associated with that. The European Union, by its very nature, is sort of a constant coalition government, where you have shifts in the European Parliament, having shifts in the policies, but not necessarily the dramatic shifts that you see in a national election. That means that turnout is going to be lower. I would hope that we will get an increase in turnout. I think that would be an important signal. But it's raining today, so I don't know what will happen.
And in terms of what you will be doing or trying to achieve when you take over the presidency of the EU, are progress on the Ukraine, for instance, progress on Turkey, are they two of the major threads?
They are two of the major things. I mean, we have a very complicated presidency period ahead of us. We have all of the institutional thing connected with an upcoming referendum in Ireland and the Lisbon Treaty and new personalities and all of that. Then we have the fallout of the global economic slowdown. You mentioned Ukraine. We talked about Latvia earlier. We have the accession negotiations. We have them with Croatia. We have them with Turkey. We have them prospectively with the Western Balkan countries. All of those are very important issues. And then, of course, the global climate talks. A lot of global green diplomacy will be conducted by the European Union in the next few months.
And what about the euro? How is that faring, do you think? Are you glad not to be part of it?
No, we are extremely happy it's there. I was Prime Minister in Sweden in the early 90s when we had a lot of turmoil in the all over Europe, and it affected us, it affected the UK, it affected us quite heavily. We didn't have the euro at that time. We had all of the currencies, they were devaluing and whatever they were doing. It was financial, monetary turmoil in Europe that affected all of us. Now, with all of the problems we've had monetary stability in Europe, and that has been enormously significant for all of us. So I don't know what we would have done without the euro. And even those of us who are outside on the margins of it, like Sweden, are de facto benefiting from the existence of the euro. Then I would like Sweden to be a member of it, but that's a secondary issue at the moment.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that survey of the situation in the EU in the next few months to come, and we shall be following that closely and looking forward to talking to you again. Carl Bildt, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Classical music, but not as we know it. 4 beautiful women in a minute.